Hi there, it's me, Bilbo Bagboy. So this wasn't meant to be a video, nor was it meant to be put out before anything else, but it's something that's been on my mind a lot lately. Initially, I was just writing it all out and was going to leave it at that, but I thought I might be able to get things across better this way. I apologize to the channel members for this not being set for early access, but I can't consider this a mainline video. Just me talking about something that's negatively impacted my life for as long as I can remember. It goes without saying that this is going to get really personal and probably a bit heavy at times. So if that's not really your thing, or you yourself aren't in a proper state of mind to listen to someone else's issues, I would recommend clicking off. There's no hard feelings, believe me. My goal here is a selfish one, to share things I never talk about and have tried to hide for some time. But in a way, I find this therapeutic, and maybe someone can relate to it. There will probably be some very loose structure, but fair warning, it may get a bit scattered. So all these thoughts started when I was looking through some videos that I made in late 2016 and early 2017, which I privated at the time. This was when I experimented with a face cam. In the past, I would get extremely anxious even thinking of these videos, despite them being privated. I made them because it seemed like an essential thing to do at the time. Almost all of the YouTubers I looked up to at one point or another used one. Yet, knowing they were out there would make me anxious to the point of nausea and throwing up. So I eventually decided to private them and only use my voice for videos going forward. Around early 2019, just before the channel hit 1,000 subscribers, I thought it might be fun to do a Q&A type video, as I had never done anything like it before, and rarely shared much about myself at the time. I vowed to myself that if the question of a face reveal ever came up, I would just rip the band-aid off and do it, then and there. And sure enough, someone asked. I must have scrapped and re-recorded that part of the video 4 dozen times. Eventually, I got a take that I could stomach, and I used it. I uploaded the video, and to force myself to confront it fully, included face reveal in the title, and I timestamped all the questions accordingly. You can guess which one was clicked, and where 99% of the video's retention is. I remember having to numb myself with everything in my possession just to settle down, and even then, that wasn't enough. It wasn't excitement, it was pure fear and panic. But I promised myself that I would do it, so I had to do it. A bit of a sidetrack here, but I think it's necessary. I've always hated having my picture taken, and to this day I still instinctively shy away from them, unless I can control everything about it. The idea that I was ugly or unattractive would be instilled in me at a very young age, starting with someone I trust more than anyone in the world, my dad. He would often state openly and loudly that I was ugly. This was obviously done to tease me, and more importantly to him, tease my mom, who would instantly come to my defense. The tone reflected that of a joke, and logically I knew that, but a seed was planted nonetheless. That seed would sprout later on in elementary school. Now, I'm no stranger to bullying, and I imagine at some point everyone has come into contact with it, whether they know it or not. The result for me has been an extremely thick skin, but the issue with a thick skin is that it can stop anything from getting in, negative or positive. But that's not the point right now. My appearance would be targeted frequently, mostly my weight, as at the time I was a bit of a chubby kid. But once in a while it would shift to my face specifically. The words ugly and unlovable would often coincide, and thus the sprout grew. I never said anything to anyone. I just held on to that feeling. After some time, it wouldn't make me cry anymore. I had no reaction to it. By that point, I was 10 years old. As I grew up, that feeling grew with me. I can recall in perfect detail events where that feeling was triggered. The best friend of one of my exes would often tell her how ugly I was, usually in front of me, trying to convince her to end things with me, how she could do so much better, so on and so forth, often very loudly. My ex did her best. We were together for about 4 years, but never once did her friend relent. By this point, though, the seed was in full bloom. I still would never show it outwardly, but internally it ran to the roots. Eventually, I would meet another person whose company I would enjoy, and we began dating. Very early on in this relationship, she would tell me how she found me ugly, unattractive, whatever, often finding reasons to justify that. Once again, I took it to the roots, but this time I retaliated. This created a vicious cycle. The well was poisoned from the very beginning. That relationship lasted 3 years, but never should have started. I clearly remember early on they had once called me while masturbating. This was before we were even dating. I didn't know what to do. By this point, I convinced myself I wanted to be with them, so I stayed quiet. I lied and said I did the same, but in reality, I just was numb the entire time. Eventually, I would tell her that the interaction had made me uncomfortable, but the response I got was, "You know you liked it." Even after it all ended, the shit didn't stop. I actively participated in it, and I'm also partly responsible for it, and will continue to hate myself every single day for it. The image of myself in my head had become warped and twisted. I was drinking a lot, several bottles of whiskey a week, whatever I could get my hands on. I was heavy into drugs, weed, and prescription pills. I would crush antidepressants and morphine into whiskey shots. At the time, all I wanted was to die. I feel that gives a solid background of my history and state. Back to the Q&A video I did, where I first showed my face online. To put it in perspective, I had never even put pictures of myself up on my old personal Facebook page, but the response was lovely. People were lovely. But remember what I said about having thick skin. It can block both negative and positive. People meant well. I knew that much, but I could never take it at face value. The image of myself was already shattered in my head. I did it as a desperate attempt to try and fix myself while also satisfying other people, but then actively rejected the result. No number of positive comments would change the way I viewed myself. Later, I tried showing my face on Twitter a handful of times, usually when a trend in a community I was once a part of would come around. The response again was largely positive, but similarly to before, it didn't match what I perceived in my head. So I once again would reject it, at times trying to do this comedically. Once during a collab stream, I was incredibly intoxicated on one of my fucked up concoctions, and the post I made showing my face was shown to the group I was streaming with. That anxious feeling resurfaced, and throat closed and couldn't breathe. I tried to downplay it, but suddenly the written words of positivity were now vocalized to me, and this had never happened before. And they meant well. They were trying to help. I did what I could to turn it into a joke. It worked and people laughed, but inside I died further. When there's a set image of yourself in your head, no words are going to alter that. No amount of well-meaning positivity is going to uproot the monstrosity that's grown from the inside. As years went on, I isolated myself further and further, but eventually I would realize that I had to be the one to change the image of myself, and that's one hell of a complex task, one that never really gets completed, only slowly improved upon. I think by acknowledging my alcoholism and drug addictions and finally seeking some form of help for them, the mental image of myself improved. I don't believe it'll ever be good, but I've proven to myself that it can at least be improved. This is what I believe to be the best picture of me that I've taken. I don't quite remember when, but it's within the last year or two. It's the one I probably used for the thumbnail for this, just a bit less pixelated. Well, I think this has gone on long enough now. I think I managed to get out everything that's been on my mind lately, and then some. If you made it to the end, thank you for listening and watching. You didn't have to do that, but I appreciate it greatly. The next video I put out will be something a lot less emotional, maybe. But I needed my mind to be clear. Take care of yourselves, and I hope to see you soon.